The most hurricane-proof, lowest maintenance, genuinely affordable home you can build in America right now is not made of wood. It's not made of brick. It looks nothing like anything your real estate agent has ever shown you. It's a steel arch, a shape that soldiers slept inside during 2 world wars, that ranchers have used across the Great Plains for 60 years, that has been standing in sub-zero Alaska since 1945 without a single structural repair, and that the American housing system has spent decades doing everything in its power to make sure you never live in one. Think about what a standard American house actually is. A wood frame, dimensional lumber nailed together in a grid, covered in drywall, which is essentially chalk, wrapped in plastic sheeting, then vinyl siding that warps in UV light and cracks in hard frost, sitting on a crawl space that floods or a slab that shifts. The average cost of building a new single-family home in the United States has now crossed $300,000, and that's before land, permits, or architectural fees. That's just the labor and materials to put the box together. When a major hurricane comes through, that wood frame, built to the absolute minimum code allows, depends on every hurricane strap doing its job perfectly at 130 miles an hour. Sometimes they do. Sometimes whole neighborhoods become debris fields. And after every storm, the same conversations happen, the same insurance adjusters show up, and the same contractors rebuild the same fragile thing in the same fragile way. We have been solving a structural problem with a lobbying solution for 70 years. But there is actually a way to build a home that doesn't have this problem at its core. The year is 1916. A Canadian mining engineer named Peter Norman Nissen is watching men die on the Western Front, not just from enemy fire, but from exposure, from sleeping in flooded trenches, from the sheer impossibility of moving conventional building materials through a battlefield. Conventional barracks required skilled labor, took days to erect, and couldn't be moved once they were up. Nissen had a different idea. He designed a structure built around a single geometry, a half-cylinder. Corrugated steel sheets bolted over a series of curved ribs, no interior load-bearing walls, no complex joinery, no machinery required. A team of 6 men with basic hand tools could put one up in 4 hours. It could be disassembled, loaded on a truck, moved 10 miles, and rebuilt the same afternoon. The British military adopted it immediately. By the end of the First World War, more than 100,000 Nissen huts had been built across the war zone. Officers wrote home about them. For the first time in months, men were sleeping dry. Field hospitals ran out of them. Supply depots, command centers, repair workshops, all of it happening inside this simple steel arch. Then, the Second World War came. The United States needed to build fast. For a military that had just expanded to 12 million personnel, deployed across 6 continents. In 1941, engineers at the George A. Fuller Company were given a brief at a naval air station in Quonset Point, Rhode Island. Design a portable, shippable building that untrained troops could assemble anywhere on Earth, without a forklift, without a crane, without an engineering degree. They took the Nissen design, refined it, standardized it, and produced what became the Quonset Hut. By the end of the war, the United States had manufactured over 170,000 of them. They went up on Pacific atolls and in the Alaskan interior. One became a chapel in the Marshall Islands. One became a forward surgery unit. Several became the first permanent structures in communities that had nothing else. When the war ended and surplus units flooded the civilian market, families bought them for $50. Churches bought them, ranchers bought them. Whole settlements of Quonset homes were built, and some of them are still standing today, 75 years later, without any structural repairs. That is not luck. That is geometry. Here's why these buildings do what they do. Think about an egg. An eggshell is made of calcium carbonate, essentially chalk, one of the weakest materials you can name. But you can squeeze a raw egg in your fist and not break it. The reason is the shape. A curved surface converts pressure into compression, and compression travels down the curve and into the ground. There's no single point where force concentrates and snaps. The steel arch works the same way. When wind hits a flat wall, the kind every conventional house has, it pushes against it directly. That's a bending force. Bending forces want to snap things. When wind hits a curved surface, it splits and flows around it. The load that does land on the structure travels down the arch as compression, directly into the foundation. Steel is one of the strongest materials on Earth in compression. The shape and the material are pulling in the same direction. This is the same principle behind Roman arch bridges that have been standing for 2,000 years. The arch is not a stylistic choice. It is the most load-efficient shape in structural engineering. Builders understood this for millennia. Somewhere along the way, the residential construction industry decided the rectangle was easier to finance. Now, add corrugation to that arch, and you've compounded the advantage. A flat steel sheet is easy to bend. You can fold it with your hands. Corrugated, give it a wave profile, and you've created a shape that resists bending from every direction simultaneously. Every ridge and valley is acting as a small structural rib. It's the same reason a cardboard box with fluting in its walls can hold far more than its weight would suggest. During a hurricane, a structure like this doesn't have a gable end trying to peel off. It doesn't have a flat roof lifting away from walls. The roof and the walls are the same continuous piece of material anchored to a foundation at two edges. There is no seam for wind to get underneath and pry apart. The aerodynamics actively work for the building. After Hurricane Andrew tore through South Florida in 1992, still one of the costliest storms in American history, structural engineers went through the damage zone and documented what failed and what didn't. Agricultural steel arch structures, used across the region for equipment storage and livestock, were standing in areas where wood frame residential buildings had been reduced to scattered lumber. The engineers weren't surprised. The arch shape had simply performed the way physics says it should. In Alaska, Quonset-style buildings have been in continuous use since the 1940s, through freeze-thaw cycles, seismic events, and temperatures that drop to 50 below. The town of Whittier, Alaska, where the majority of residents live in concrete high-rises, is surrounded by steel arch infrastructure that has quietly outlasted every other building type in the region. On cost, the numbers are what stop people cold when they first hear them. A steel arch building kit from an American manufacturer, the kind that ships on a flatbed and arrives with every panel, every rib, and every piece of hardware, runs between $25 and $50 per square foot of enclosed space for the shell. A conventional wood frame home, just the structural shell, runs between $100 and $150 per square foot before insulation, drywall, siding, or roofing. You're looking at a genuine 40 to 60% reduction in structural cost before a single interior wall goes up. That's not a marginal improvement. That's a different category of expense entirely. Assembly is 2 to 3 days for a small crew. No crane, no complex foundation formwork, no specialized subcontractors. The structure is the roof, so there is no separate roofing trade and no separate framing trade. One system does every structural job simultaneously. So here's the question. If the physics are demonstrably better, if the costs are 40% lower, if the track record goes back over 100 years across the harshest conditions on Earth, 2 world wars, Pacific typhoons, Alaskan winters, then why does almost nobody live in one? Why, when you try to get a mortgage on a steel arch home in most American counties, do you hit a wall? Why do residential zoning offices look at you like you've asked permission to build a submarine? Why, in a country that talks constantly about affordable housing, the most affordable, durable structural system is effectively excluded from most neighborhoods? The answer isn't dramatic, it's bureaucratic, and sometimes bureaucracy is the most effective form of suppression there is. Start with zoning. Most American residential zones require what codes call conventional construction. That phrase sounds neutral. It isn't. It was defined in the mid-20th century around the wood frame platform construction method that the home building industry had already standardized. Anything outside that definition, steel, rammed earth, straw bale, dome, or arch, has to fight for a variance, a special use permit, a separate engineering review. Every step of that process costs money, takes months, and requires you to hire specialists to argue your case to a board that has 100 reasons to just say no. Most people give up. That outcome is not accidental. Then there's the appraisal problem, and this one has real teeth. Mortgage lenders require an appraisal before they'll lend. Appraisals are built on comparable sales, similar properties in the same area that have recently changed hands. If there are no steel arch homes in your county, there are no comparables. No comparables means the appraiser cannot support a market value. No supported value means no conventional mortgage. So even if you could build the structure for 40% less than a wood frame home, you cannot access the financing system that the vast majority of American homebuyers use. You are locked out of the primary wealth-building mechanism of the American middle class, not by a law and not by a conspiracy, but by a paperwork requirement that was never designed with your building in mind. And then there are homeowners associations. Hundreds of millions of Americans live in communities with architectural review boards that have actual legal authority over what you can build. Those boards operate from a standard of visual compatibility with a surrounding neighborhood. A steel arch doesn't look like the neighborhood. Application denied. That is not a technical objection. That is an aesthetic preference encoded into private governance with the power of a deed restriction behind it. Underneath all of this is a simple reality. The conventional home building industry in the United States generates roughly $500 billion a year. It is organized around wood framing, drywall, fiberglass insulation, asphalt shingles, products manufactured at industrial scale, sold through national distribution networks, installed by licensed trades trained specifically for those systems. Every code update, every lending standard, every neighborhood covenant was developed inside an environment where that system was already the assumed baseline. Not because it performs best, because it is most profitable to build, sell, and repair on a repeating cycle. A steel arch shell does not need new siding after 20 years. It doesn't rot, it doesn't get termites. It doesn't need a new roof membrane every 15 years. That permanence is genuinely bad for a business model built around recurring replacement. No industry profits when something lasts 100 years without needing maintenance. The conventional construction system is, in practice, a recurring revenue machine. Not necessarily by deliberate design, but by outcome. A house built to minimum code creates ongoing dependency. It needs regular repair, periodic replacement of major components, and professional intervention every decade. The steel arch breaks that cycle completely. Systems don't like things that break their cycle. We chose a construction standard that creates ongoing consumer dependency, not because it's structurally superior, but because it fits more cleanly into an economy built around regular spending. Here's what it actually looks like to build one today. Several American manufacturers produce steel arch residential kits. Steel Master Buildings, based in Virginia, is one of the longest established and ships nationwide. The kit arrives on a flatbed, curved steel panels, arch ribs, end wall framing, and all hardware, with a step-by-step assembly manual. A small crew can erect the shell in a weekend. For a functional home, you're looking at a structure between 30 and 50 feet wide and whatever length suits your needs. A 30 by 40 foot footprint gives you 1,200 square feet, a perfectly livable small home. A shell kit at that size runs roughly $25,000 to $40,000, depending on steel gauge and finish. That is your structure and your entire weather envelope, walls, roof, and frame in a single line item. The foundation is a continuous concrete grade beam at both arch ends with anchor bolts cast in. No complex formwork, no specialized pour. Any local contractor who has poured a standard slab can handle it. Interior finishing follows standard residential practice. Framed partition walls for rooms, conventional electrical and plumbing run through the framed sections, finished flooring of your choice. The single rule you cannot skip is insulation. Bare steel conducts heat and cold directly. An uninsulated steel arch is an oven in July and a freezer in January. Closed-cell spray foam applied directly to the interior surface of the arch, 2 to 3 inches of it, solves this completely. It also acts as a vapor barrier and adds rigidity to the panels. This is not optional. It is the step that converts a steel storage building into a comfortable, energy-efficient home. Budget for it from the start. In cold climates, some builders add a secondary interior framed wall with bat insulation for an extra thermal break. In hot, humid climates, the curved roofline is actually an advantage. It sheds wind-driven rain more effectively than any pitched roof, and a ventilation opening at the ridge creates natural convective airflow that meaningfully reduces cooling loads. There are real trade-offs, not deal breakers, but trades you need to know before you commit. You need to own land. This is not an urban infill solution. If you're in a rural or semi-rural county with permissive zoning, the path is relatively clear. If you're in a suburban subdivision with an HOA and deed restrictions, you are fighting a completely different battle before a single anchor bolt goes in the ground. The interior space follows the curve. Usable ceiling height at the walls is limited by the arch profile. Your furniture layout and room planning need to account for a ceiling that slopes to the edges. Most people adapt to this quickly and end up preferring the spatial quality. Some don't. Walk through one before you commit. Getting a conventional mortgage is still genuinely difficult in most markets. Some buyers use cash. Some use construction loans through local community banks willing to work with non-standard projects. Some owner-builders complete construction and then refinance based on appraised land and improvement value. It requires more legwork than calling a mortgage broker. That is the honest reality of working outside the system. This is permanent infrastructure, not a weekend experiment. The shell goes up fast. The home takes months, like any serious build. Plan accordingly. A lot of what this channel covers was nearly lost, not because it stopped working, but because the industry moved on to something more profitable to sell you. If rediscovering the lost art of high-performance, decentralized building matters to you, subscribing and sharing is the simplest way to make sure this kind of knowledge keeps being found. And if you want to see how a rammed earth wall can regulate the temperature inside a home year-round, storing heat and cold in the dirt itself with zero mechanical systems, then you need to watch our video on thermal mass construction right here.